looking at how they do it over there, would you just trust your life with it, with an AI?
It depends what it is. So if I had to think back of the first time that I worked with AI for healthcare data, that was at MIT, where our professor, Regina Bosley, had become very famous for using AI to understand mammogram. So cancer, breast cancer especially. Why? She'd had breast cancer. She had noticed that the doctors did not notice it early on, and actually the breast cancer had been in her pictures earlier on. So she started developing better computer vision models, algorithms that could detect cancer at a much earlier stage. She also started noticing that whether or not you are of a different ethnicity, your chances of having discovered your breast cancer earlier or later differs because the tissue of
Oh,
different ethnicities is quite different. And most of the common medical knowledge we have today is unfortunately for white people, Caucasian people.
hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Impact of AI Explored, where we look at AI and what it does to us in our daily lives. And today we have a very special guest, Emilie Lundblad. Emilie, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. I work today as head of AI at Ambu. It's a mid-tech company. I have been working with tech data AI for the past 15 years. I would say, in essence, I'm just a geek that likes to keep learning and keep improving. So, my journey into this started with actually working in data and finance and then improving on it and then building BI reporting and databases and integrations. And then it became platforms, and then it became algorithms for automating orders and stock. And that became e-commerce platforms. And then once you start online with online data, you really see why you need statistical modeling, or what is machine learning and today AI. So that became my journey into that space. And then I thought, okay, I needed to go back to university and learn that. So I did a candidate degree in quantitative finance and econometrics. And after that,
Ooh.
I wanted to go out and learn what was best practice. And I thought in consulting, you would learn best practice. And I always laugh at that because I think you definitely learn what not to do. And you get a lot of you get a lot of good perspectives on different approaches to solving problems, but also how the core of a company, the core service it delivers, decides so much about their processes and their digital maturity and also their culture. So that's been the interesting part. Then from there, I had the privilege that one of the companies gave me a minor in machine learning and AI from MIT. And there I got to sniff or learn some more about using AI for healthcare from one of my professors, Regina Basile. I'm very grateful for that. And from there on, I took more certifications, especially in the Microsoft data and AI than I can remember, but also in project management and other areas. And then I moved into also studying a master in IT management, still trying to finish my thesis there. But so it's been a continual learning journey. Spent a lot of years in consultancy, spent a lot of years focusing on the Microsoft stack of data and AI, but I've also worked with Google and IBM and a little AWS. So it's been a
Mhm.
long learning journey. That's taken me to now become a 3 times Microsoft MVP, first in data platforms and then in AI, and a regional director for the second time. So that's a little bit about me. Other than that, I have a little dog called Maggie. I hope she won't bark. She might. Um, I live in Denmark. I have a Dutch husband yeah, we're celebrating 15 years tomorrow. So yeah,
Oh,
that's a little bit
congrats.
about me. And
Yeah.
I love geeking out about how we can use data and AI to improve the world.
Yeah, and we met at Express Live, where you were one of the keynote speakers,
Oh
and
yeah.
James and I also had a slot, and we heard your session there, and we sat next to each other saying, "If we can get her on the podcast, that would be cool." And magic works, and there you are. So really cool that you can have the time to be on our podcast. And when we talked during Express Live during lunch, we also had to talk about, okay, what can we talk about? What would be a cool subject? And the subject of healthcare and AI is yeah, it's one of the areas where the biggest wins are to be gained using AI. So that was really quick to say, okay, let's talk about that. We could talk hours on that. So we
Yep.
might need to narrow it a bit to 40-ish minutes, but we'll do our best. And so that's a bit of the idea. And you said, well, one of the things I would like to talk about, and that might be a cool thing to start off with, is the difference between the use of AI in healthcare in Europe and in the Asia side, so India, China, where they look at how AI can help them, and they are very more open to it or more enthusiastic about it. Can you tell us a bit about what you see and what your ideas are?
Yeah, so looking at China and India, they're the ones who are promoting the most that they're using AI, Gen AI for healthcare, but also medtech, even drug discovery. Getting closer to exactly what's going on in China is difficult, but looking at some of the things that they have been very proud of has, of course, been their notable AI hospitals, where they say that 42 doctors or AI doctors and nurses are using AI to diagnose, treat, and collaborate on thousands of cases daily, and that
Hmm?
these agents can handle over 3,000 cases per day. And they demonstrate high scores, even when you look at US medical license benchmarks across 21 different departments. So that is quite impressive. This is a virtual facility developed by, and I don't know if I say it correctly, Tsinchuan University. Um, Quite impressive what can be done there. Now, trying to go into depth and really scraping, is it so? What's really going on? It's a little harder in
Hmm.
China than in India. So, India, it's easier to say, and there are really good articles about this on World Economic Forum, but also WHO has been in there looking at what has been done. And if I had to just take the highlights of it, then the AI expenditure in India is expected to reach 11.7 billion by 2024, and they expect
Ooh.
to add 1 trillion to India's economy just on AI in healthcare and medtech. And they're already using AI in diagnostics. This can be algorithms for screening for diseases. I've even heard of that firsthand from some of my former colleagues and team members. And this range from cancer and diabetic retinopathy to cardiovascular diseases. Things that we know are possible in the US, but we're not seeing it actually being implemented. So they have a very measured approach to AI in healthcare. In the same space, they're also making sure to train models on they're digitalizing all of their healthcare data, and they're training models to make it available to create more AI that can help all of their population. Now, one of the things that, of course, is present in India and China to a higher degree than in Europe is the need for doctors and lack of doctors compared to the size of population. China has an aging population, a huge challenge with how many old people they have that needs healthcare compared to how many young doctors they have that can help out, especially in rural areas. The problem is even greater in India, where despite how many doctors they educate, many leaves for better paying jobs abroad, and those
Hmm.
who do stay would rather live in the big cities than necessarily help the people who are staying out in rural areas. So access to doctors in rural areas of India, where they see the most diseases, even some of the diseases that's been eradicated in other parts of the world, well, it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
So they can't just go to the doctor because there might not be a doctor. So the need there to have AI help people is even greater. In Danish, we have a saying where we say a naked woman will learn to spin. And I think that covers where India and China is at. Like they have a need that is so great, they're willing to take risks that we are not in the EU. But
Hmm.
should we consider taking some of those risks? How can we approach that? Because the benefits that we are seeing that they're reaping in China and especially in India are so great. So if we really intend to use AI and Gen AI for the greater good of our population, and thereby also their health, then AI is essential. And
Yeah.
are we going in the right direction? So those are some of the things that I have noticed and been fascinated by, and I really would like to dive into further.
Yeah, I can imagine, I like the Danish saying, "A naked woman will learn to spin," because yeah, she needs clothes and there are none, and necessity makes for desperate choices. But the idea, the idea would be, because we also talked about in our pre-conversation about, would you just trust your life to an AI? And
Yeah.
you said the consultancy answer, it depends on what AI.
Yeah.
But in their case, I can imagine if the choice is we have none to limited to we have AI, which is fairly good to good, and sometimes even better than a human, then the choice would be easy. But looking at how they do it over there, would you just trust your life with it, with an AI?
It depends what it is. So if I had to think back of the first time that I worked with AI for healthcare data, that was at MIT, where our professor, Regina Bosley, had become very famous for using AI to understand mammogram. So cancer, breast cancer especially. Why? She'd had breast cancer. She had noticed that the doctors did not notice it early on, and actually the breast cancer had been in her pictures earlier on. So she started developing better computer vision models, algorithms that could detect cancer at a much earlier stage. She also started noticing that whether or not you are of a different ethnicity, your chances of having discovered your breast cancer earlier or later differs, because the tissue of
Oh,
different ethnicities is quite different, and most of the common medical knowledge we have today is unfortunately for white people, Caucasian people. So if you were of another ethnicity, your chances of dying from breast cancer or not having it diagnosed early enough was fairly increased. So if you asked me, would you let a narrow AI analyze your mammography? I would go, yes, any day. I've seen it again and again in research that they can see and track changes in our tissue, changes in the pictures, patterns that we as humans have a very, very hard time seeing. And the same would also go if I had to do an X-ray and have my pictures go to a radiologist. I think the radiologists can do a far better job if they get help from AI. Examples being, I had a colleague who had an accident. He came to the hospital. They did an X-ray. They focused on his back and said, "There's nothing wrong with you," and sent him home. And turns out he did have a cracked skull, but they were just looking at his back. They were in a hurry. You know, all of our healthcare professionals are under pressure nowadays. I fully understand that. Nevertheless, he had a cracked skull and he today lives with all the side effects. So if I had been him, yes, I would have liked to have had a narrow AI, looked at my radiology pictures, my x-rays, and make sure that we didn't miss anything. So I think the first step for me here in Europe would be a human in the loop, but I do believe that we, with the help of AI, can do a better job than we can without the feedback from narrow AI. Now, would I throw out all the doctors of the hospital and just have a multi-agent system with access to narrow AI? I don't think we're quite there yet. Somewhere in between. I hope that
yeah.
answers your question.
Yeah, and also that uploading a picture to ChatGPT and saying what's wrong with my leg might not be the best course of action at this moment, because generative AI does hallucinate, as you said, or in the talk we had earlier, and yeah,
Though
the
Sam
hit and miss
Altman has
ratio
been
is
claiming
low.
that GPT-5 is the best model in terms of healthcare. Now, I'm not sure I'm believing much of what he's saying, because he said GPT-5 was the best model, and I completely disagree with that, because it's been pretty. The feedback has not been good. So I'm taking what he says about GPT-5 and healthcare with a bit of a pinch of salt.
So I think what's been tricky and haven't been communicated well enough about ChatGPT 5 is that it is a better model, but it requires much more skill in prompting than the prior models. And many people don't have that. I was listening to a podcast this weekend where a UK GP explained really well the problem. She said, you know, if my mom has an issue and she needs to go to the doctor, before that, I will put ChatGPT on and I will interview her on all the questions that I would ask as a GP, and I will have it put that into a summary and give her a very clear direction of what she needs to go to the doctor and ask for, because otherwise she's not going to get the help that she needs. Now, she will get a good response because she is a general practitioner, so she is a doctor. She knows what to ask for, so she knows how to pre-prompt it and then ask all the right questions. But that doesn't mean that everybody out there knows how to do that. That will be very difficult for most of us. But let's stop for a moment and remember that's also the case when we go talk to our general practitioner, to our doctor. Most of us go to the doctor and like, it hurts here. And they're like, yeah, I don't know what to do about it. And by the way, I need to get on to the next patient. So we're also not good enough at framing our questions and being assertive. And for that, I can see already that ChatGPT can help. So I have an example. I had to send my husband to the doctor. It's a Danish doctor. His Danish is not that good. He's not that good with being assertive to doctors. He's of a generation where, the doctors knows everything is right. So I will beforehand make sure together with ChatGPT to have made a script that goes, this is what you need to ask for. These are the symptoms you have to highlight. And, you're not leaving until you get these blood tests. So for me, it's a depend, but you have to be very skilled in your prompting technique to get a lot out of ChatGPT. And why? Because in the past, we're all lazy. That's the way we are. Yeah. So many of us have just been like, I'm going to go for the O3 model. It thinks really well. And I'm just going to write 3 words to it. And that's my prompt. And we've wasted a lot of compute power. And of course, OpenAI have learned from that. And they've gone, okay, how do we, only put the really hard prompts to the bigger models and then the small prompts to the easier models. And that's, in essence, I am making it very simplified. I'd say that's what ChatGPT 5 does. But that means that if you just wrote 3 words, you will get the lightweight model and you will not get any deep thinking. So if you didn't ask it to be a PhD, you didn't explain to it to be a general practitioner with expertise in, I don't know, cardiovascular diseases or hormonal issues, then no, you're not going to get the help that you need.
Yeah, so
And that's what's
it's
difficult.
still,
Not everybody's going to get an equal amount of value out of AI because we're not equally good in prompting and understanding how to work with AI.
that's a cool
That's
thing to do.
Yeah, but that could be a disadvantage as well of using AI with healthcare because, as you said, Gurjan, you said someone uploads a picture, says, "What is this?" type thing,
Yeah.
and so I think that goes back to the whole thing about how the narrow focus AI, which is being trained on the healthcare data, and then I think that works better than just asking GPT-5, for a diagnosis.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I've been seeing people work on is how do I, in different categories, frame a set of questions that needs to be asked to the end user in order to make sure that we've clarified every possible scenario. And that can also be for security, but we know that people are not always good at expressing what they need or what the problem is. So what do we need to do? We need to have a list of questions we ask them to make sure that we've covered each of these areas. Now, we cannot make sure that they answer correctly, but we can try to put them in the right frame of mind to give the information. And that's back to the example of the UK GP. She knew how to ask the right questions to get enough of a context to get a good answer. I think that's something I can see that we're looking at many different aspects in order to get the most out of AI.
Yeah, and so we have it in the podcast. We talked earlier about the essence of prompt engineering and how important that is. This is an essential skill for the future. Learn how to talk to an AI.
Yeah. And so if there's anything I love about EU AI Act, it is this Article 4 where it's requiring us to have AI literacy and requiring all companies to educate their employees on the AI they use, and especially educate the employees who are developing AI on the risks, the ethics, and all the inner works of AI models. I think that's the best benefit that can come out of it.
Yeah, we've seen in our company, we've seen the first organizations asking us for training in AI literacy. They've literally come to us saying, okay, we need some kind of training. Do you have that? Say, okay, yes, I think. What are you planning on using? And then the conversation goes out from there because they just want to they want to tick the box, but they don't know how to use what they want. But the mindset is getting there, at least in Dutch organizations, that okay, this is something that we need to address.
Yes.
So that's a cool first step.
Yeah.
And then we always say AI is a marathon, not a sprint. So okay, we can do AI literacy, but then we need to educate the people with all the changing models and all the changing stuff that's happening to be on point and and help them get the best out of AI.
Yeah, I think it's the easiest to do it when you're tool specific. It's hardest with the teams that are developing AI to make sure you covered everything. And there I tend to be like, okay, I'm going to give you a broad training, and then you tell me everything you missed, and then we do it one more time. I think a human brain just worked like that. You don't know what you wanted or didn't want until you got chocolate ice cream instead of a banana, or the other way around.
Yeah. And so this was not my ideal ice cream.
There you go.
No, but the idea, recapitulating a bit on what you said, is if you look at AI in healthcare, the narrow AI, especially trained for a purpose, can be a benefit and is really useful in Asia, in the Asia region. And that is something that we need to explore more here. And the generative AI stuff is, we need to educate our users more, better to use it. And it might be, it's not a replacement. It's the human in the loop stuff.
I think we still need human in the loop. I think the big advantage they have in Asia for the narrow AI is their access to data. So not having as rigid and restrictive regulation as we have in Europe. Currently, that is one of our biggest challenges. Even if we want to train a narrow AI that would be approved under the EU AI Act, we lack the data. Now, we can create a lot of fantastic synthetic data. NVIDIA has created fantastic models for this. There are even MATLAB libraries that are ISO approved and can be used, but it is a challenge that we can't access the data that would show us the edge cases, that would show us the diversity in different ethnic backgrounds that we need, whether for drug discovery or when you're looking at our tissue and internal organs. So this is something I would like the European Union to look more at and consider, what is the price today that we pay for having such strict regulations and making almost all healthcare, medtech, pharma companies afraid of using real-world patient data? It's hard to say, but we can see how much they're gaining in India, and that's a good reflection.
Yeah, that's really cool. And looking at, for example, the healthcare in the Netherlands, we are aging, we are growing older, and the population itself is growing older. So, and there are not enough young people to care for all the old people in the future. So, and I think that's a European and a broader problem that we need to do something, because otherwise all our workforce will be working in healthcare.
But we're kind of strapped into this weird thing where all the people who need to receive healthcare from our governments are complaining and they're unhappy, and more is pushed on to the employees in the sectors. They are under enormous pressure. Just the number of doctors that get burnout every year, in India they even quote suicide as being a huge problem. And then on the other hand, our governments are making stricter and stricter regulation for using tech, even data analytics, but especially AI in this sector. So it's a strange squeeze where we're getting further and further from the need. And then what regulation is doing, while we're actually seeing that AI and technology can offer us the solutions, and other countries such as India are showing us that this is possible. So how do we change this? How do we have that conversation that encourages all to want to use AI for good and improve our healthcare and health?
Probably a lot of it would boil down to who we're going to give that data to. Like, is it going to be OpenAI, Microsoft, and given everything that's going on at the moment, there's so many conversations around data sovereignty and AI sovereignty. And so it feels like if we're going to allow it in healthcare, it would have to be a European AI model hosted in Europe with no metadata transferred to the US or anywhere else on the planet. And I think that's kind of, so I don't know, maybe I think that's kind of where we fall down at the moment.
I think that is an excellent point. What I do notice is what is it that happens when we don't offer any solutions in general in Europe? It is that people are putting all of their data into ChatGPT. So because
Mm.
there are no secure apps, because we can't do it with our own healthcare system, we're simply using ChatGPT and OpenAI. Then we don't really have control because often it's a free service and you don't own the data that goes in there. So when we don't make that possible from a regulatory perspective, maybe we're actually going in the wrong direction. So in India, they are digitalizing all the health records. In Denmark, we have all the health records digitalized already. I know the Netherlands also have this, but we're extremely restricted on the access. So even if I'm a researcher with a university in Denmark and I want to do research on this data, I can't just extract it. I have to open either be a special laptop or a special portal, and then I can go in and I can have a look at it. But just extracting some of it to do any kind of AI machine learning on it is incredibly difficult as we speak. And
Mm.
here, maybe we could look to India. Maybe we can learn something from the way that they've anonymized the data, the way they've used federated models to actually gain all of that knowledge so that it can be used by research first, but then also pharma companies, medtech companies, and so forth to help improve our health and access to healthcare across Europe.
Yeah, and if there are any listeners that have ideas, we are very keen to hear from you. We have a few believers here that want to help make this work.
So I
Yeah.
think I saw a very good startup, and it made sense to me right away why that startup was from Norway. In Norway, they have some of the best cancer research data in the world. It is not readily available. Why? Again, patient safety. But what they have been working on has been creating synthetic data sets that was modeling completely what you were seeing in the data. So the research could be done on it and thereby new AI models. And I was talking to a VC and they were showing me a new startup. And this startup was actually recognizing how birthmarks could turn into cancer. And it was Norwegian. But the biggest markets that they were planning on selling to were, of course, Nigeria, India, and
Mm.
Indonesia. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's a very good example that our healthcare data can benefit us, but it can also benefit the wider world, especially in those countries that can't just go to a general practitioner. And since we do have the data digitalized, maybe we could make just the regulation a little easier to understand, or we could make public attempts to have synthetic data or federated models that we could utilize and learn from. Yes, in Denmark, we have the Gefion project, which is a collaboration by the Novo Nordisk Fund and also the Danish Investment Fund, along with NVIDIA. And you can train very, very big models and you can do research and you can do research data. But not that many companies are doing it. And if I go down and I ask people, I know I'm like, hey, we could do this and isn't it cool? And there are, so much compute power that we can use. And they're like, yeah, but we don't have the data. So what's the point? Like, yeah, okay. So we got compute power. We offer it almost for free to Danish companies. But what do they lack to make better AI models that can help us? The data. Why do they lack the data? Well, GDPR makes everybody afraid of touching anything that is related to personal data.
Mm. I suppose what we need is a balance. Obviously GDPR is there to protect all of our personal data, but is there some way it could be anonymized or something like that to be able to be utilized in a very narrow focused approach? Because obviously you don't want to be giving all your personal data to some startup or something like that. It's like so yeah, I think in Europe we always try and balance it, and in some cases we overregulate, but then you have other places in the world where they go the complete opposite, and I don't want that either. So it's a balance that I don't think we've got right, but and it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. Obviously, I think as you mentioned, we've got the AI Act, and there will be amendments to that. So I would say, and healthcare is obviously a huge part of what AI can do, as we've talked about, and other nations who have different views on data is the way I'm going to say it. Have different approaches, but yeah, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this progresses. But we can't just be stagnant about it. We have to do something. So it's going to be interesting to see what our powers that be decide to do with this.
Absolutely. And I think the good thing that I see in EU AI Act has been in regards to our democracy and some of the high risk cases. But unfortunately, they have also classified healthcare, meaning diagnostics, biometrics, clinical decision support. Any of these are classified as high risk, which requires strict compliance. Strict compliance means that it's a very heavy process and it takes 5-10 times longer to actually develop an AI model or tool when you have to go through all of these steps. And since today we don't have any jurisprudence when it comes to EU AI Act, interpreting this regulation is also really hard. So what happens instead is that many companies just stop and they're like, oh, we're not going to touch this and we're not going to do it for another 2 years. And that just puts our progression towards better healthcare with AI back. And so here, I think many would like to see that there was interpretations, scenario descriptions, or better descriptions somehow of how to understand and interpret this in day-to-day work. That would be a huge help. And also, it interacts with many other regulations, like medical device regulations, MDR. It interacts with GDPR. And then suddenly you have this whole net of different laws that you have to live up to. And it becomes so complex that even with 10 lawyers in the room, nobody can tell you what you can do and what you can't do. And then we don't do anything. And that's not beneficial for any of us. Yeah.
No,
and so
no,
what can we do different? We could have our governments spend money and effort in making the data available in an anonymized way that we were allowed to use and knew were compliant with the overall regulation. That is something that we, from a Danish or EU organization government perspective, could go in and support.
Yeah, let's start with that and see where it takes us, because the as you said, the potential is enormous. Creating medicine, doing the research, all the checks on MRIs, etc.
Absolutely. And on like the drug discovery side, we're seeing most of the money for AI startups go into biotech. And if you just look at something like AlphaFold 3 and the way it can today both forecast but also describe proteins, even enzymes and ligaments, it's quite amazing. And you can already start experimenting with how they will interact with each other and use this for drug discovery. And in the US, this is being picked up. So there is a very big collaboration between Novartis, but also Lilly, with Google or AlphaFold 3 and DeepMind to use this for drug discovery. We would like to also see more of that in Europe. I know that some of the pharma companies in Denmark are looking into this, but we're still far behind. And again, often they lack data to make this even better. Sometimes they're also very careful about how to do this, because how are we going to give all the documentation that is needed for regulation when we go into clinical trials? This is a real issue. So even if we could discover a new drug, we can't perhaps take it into clinical trials because we can't live up to the requirements for documentation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So not only do we need to be more open about our data, but we also need to look at the legislation in the different stages of development. They also need to be updated to the time of now.
Yeah.
Because most of the registration is old.
Yes.
We've done it for 30 years like this. Yeah, we've done it like this for 30 years, but we need to change it now because it's not.
one of the things we don't see is that when we don't have to do it the way we did it for 30 years, we also have to use the approved systems that has worked for 30 years. Now you imagine what a system looks like after 30 years. It's, it's not that modern anymore. It might have sanded up. The process is not that efficient, even if everybody have the best of intention. So for those reasons, we also do need our politicians to take a look at our regulation and see what they can do to enable us to use AI to improve our health.
Yeah, and I can also see a possible problem for European companies in healthcare being outperformed by their Asian or American counterparts because they can use AI because the legislation there is more loose.
Absolutely. And I mean, in the end of the day, that's what we're seeing happening with ChatGPT. It has developed in the US because it was possible under their regulation to do innovation and have high velocity. And now everybody in Europe is using it. And why shouldn't that also happen with your next medical device app? Now I'm wearing an Aura ring. As far as I know, it's from Finland. It's a European invention, but who says that the next even better device won't be from America? At the other hand, I have my Apple Watch with all of my biometrics, and this has been ruling so far. And I do give it all of my health data every day because I want to know how healthy I am and how I'm doing, and that's possible. So I think perhaps here, Europe don't want to be India, China, or the US, but perhaps we could look to the UK or Australia. Australia has made very clear and to the point regulation that is supposedly easier to work with. And in the UK, they have made it possible to do a lot more research and innovation by using sandboxes. So I think this is something that we could look to. Perhaps this is where we will find, some health.
Yeah, some common ground or some middle way between the open system and the completely closed system. Yeah.
Plus, they are built, so their way their law system is created is closer to our law system and legal frameworks.
Yeah.
And I didn't study law, so just forgive me if the terminology is not perfect. My field and interest is, taking AI and data.
Yeah, but being stuck in the AI field means you get a lot of collateral information around it that you need to know something about. So,
yeah, and I find it fascinating. I think that if ever there was AI for good and somewhere where AI could really lift everybody around the world, this is the space.
Yeah,
and that's why it's an important discussion to have.
Yeah, and I also said to James a few times and to other people, because I find it a great time to be alive, to be in when this innovation wave is hitting us, to see what's happening now. It's an incredible time to look at what it's going to do to us all.
It is.
And how it's going to help us.
I also sometimes feel a bit, but maybe that's just me. I would like things to move faster. I'm like, oh, look at how much we can do, what a big difference we could make today. So it also makes me a little impatient in some terms, and being impatient under EU regulation, that's not a good combination.
No, that's not a happy marriage. No. But I also read somewhere, or someone told us, that even if we stop innovating on AI today, we still have 10 years or 15 years of work to discover everything that is possible with the AI we have today, and to put it to play it out unto 100% usability.
Yeah. I think that sounds right. I find every day when people challenge me to, can you do this? And, I let it boil for a bit, and late in the evening, I sit down on the laptop and go, oh yeah, you actually could. You just needed to combine 3 different models and ask them, and then, back and forth.
Yeah, yes, we're not going fast enough. On the other hand, there is still so much that we already have that we don't use.
Yeah.
So there's also...
I would say that so many don't use, because if we look at how many people have ever fine-tuned the model, distilled the model, actually created a multi-agent system, what is it, like 2%, 5% of the population? It's not more than that. So it's not a technology that is being widely utilized or widely understood.
Yeah. And it's a really powerful technology. So there's a lot of education to be done.
And I feel that every day. Like yesterday, one of my colleagues asked me if I thought it was hard keeping up with AI, and just, yeah, it is. Like there are news all the
Yeah.
time. I don't know everything, no matter how many podcasts I listen to, videos I look or at, or how many articles I read. There is still more.
Yeah, and then you go. I went on holiday for 3 weeks. Then I come home and the GPT-5 has been released, and I go, oh
Yeah.
crap, here we go again.
Don't go on holiday. Not in these days.
No,
No.
no. It's not allowed to go on holidays because you miss too much information. So it takes 2 weeks to catch up to a 3-week gap.
Yeah, I feel you. So
Okay, cool.
if I had to just try to explain what we can learn from the UK, then what they've done in the UK, they have something called MHRA, and they run a supervised sandbox. And in this sandbox, a handful of cutting edge AI as a medical device products are being tested in a controlled NHS setting. For those who don't know what NHS is, I don't know if you want to explain it, James, but that's the public healthcare in the UK. So here we have the government and the public healthcare being a part of testing out new medical devices. And their goal is then to find and fix regulatory and safety gaps before a wide rollout, and to publish what is learned so everybody benefits. So it's not a shortcut approach, but it's a test base to inform future guidance and market routes. And this does make it easier to have AI devices that can help the healthcare, but also to clarify what do we need to have into regulation when it comes to explainability, ongoing model monitoring, a very important one, model updates, because the sandbox let the regulator and the NHS approve the bodies that work directly with the real products to answer those questions faster and more concisely. So I think that is a brilliant move that we could learn from in Europe. And I know you'd say, okay, but EU AI Act also allows you to innovate and research. That is true, but then the bottlenecks comes down when you need approval and you need to do clinical trials. So here is definitely an interesting example to look at that I think we can learn from.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So that's a cool thing to conclude with. So we in the EU need to look more to what our neighbors are doing, because
For
AI
once.
in healthcare, for once, yeah. No, because the AI in the Asian side is being used to really help people, and Australia, UK are looking into, are more proactive in the creating the environment to use AI for the good.
Yeah. And if I had to
And we
tell a
should do that.
story of how did this come to my attention, that didn't happen when I entered medtech. It happened in my former job. I had a team of employees in India, and one of them told me about going to the doctor. And going to the doctor was basically going to the hospital, getting a full body scan, then go back home, wait a day, get your AI report on everything that was found, and then a doctor would tell you what treatment you needed. And that was mind blowing to me. I was like, that is brilliant. That is what we should be doing. And that was when I really started looking into it. Hey, wow, it's really amazing and cool what they're doing here in India
Yeah.
to help people. And that's not the only thing, because of course, because you have no doctors in many of the rural areas, they also don't always have access to medicine. So they've also enabled drones to fly out with medicine to remote areas, which is also mind blowing, living in Europe where you're almost not allowed to take a robot or a drone to drive anywhere.
No.
Actually, here in Ireland, we're doing a lot of testing with drones. There's a company who are doing food delivery and that kind of thing. But they have done, as far as I know, they have done some testing with delivering drugs and from pharmacies and stuff like that. So their headquarters is based here. They've been doing it all over Ireland. They are called Mana, I think is the name of the company. But they're like doing all sorts of things by delivery with drones here in Ireland, and they're rolling it out to a wider area. I'll actually have to look it up exactly, but it's getting bigger and bigger. So I think their plan eventually is to cover the whole of Dublin. So we'll see. But yeah, there is lots of different things with drones, and I suppose that the whole thing about you help people who are isolated and that kind of thing. So yeah, yeah.
Really cool. So
I've seen that research in like when I worked with AI in Norway, they also allowed some tests of this, but I can tell you here in Denmark that is not allowed, and it's just another interesting area to explore. And then we could go down robotics, where we know that even for operations, especially those that require a very high degree of precision, there is also a lot to be gained from having robots doing the operation or assisting doctors in doing the operation to get better precision than if doctors are doing this alone. This research is being done, but it's not something that is generally available.
we need to wait a bit for that to become really open to the public. But I can imagine, and I hope that it happens soon, because better quality of healthcare is always something that we want. Being sure that we survive an operation, and that the doctor has a drink the evening before and is a bit shaky in the morning can affect your success on the operation is, yeah, does not feel like the correct road to walk into.
No,
Saying that, I think it's time we draw this really interesting episode to an end. Thank you, Emilie, for your insight and your talks about AI and how they do that in different countries in healthcare. Really liked it. Learned a lot again, as in every episode. Learned a few new things. That's always good. So thank you for your time. Everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
thank you for
Bye-bye.
having me.